My aim was to produce a short film sequence that reflected my knowledge of cinematography and made some resemblance to my textual analysis in relation to the messages and values conveyed in child romances, capturing the essence of innocence and fixation. I also wanted to incorporate some of the techniques and choices used by director Nick Moore, such as the use of one character in a frame to convey emotion, a realistic location setting such as a child's bedroom, and atmospheric, non-diegetic music. In this sequence, I wanted to show a contrasting view between child romances and teenage romances. As seen in Wild Child and Anger Songs and Perfect Snogging, teenage romance is conveyed to be more of an attraction with more intimacy, as opposed to children's romance, which is more obsession and fantasy. I wanted to make my sequence modern, hence the reason for choosing One Direction as the celebrity obsession, which is also reflective of the time. My short film uses an element of parasocial interaction, meaning it's an unreciprocal romance, with the members of One Direction not knowing the girl even exists. During the post-production editing stage, I adjusted the colour of the opening and closing shot to black and white. This contrasts all the shots regarding the fascination with One Direction we see in the middle of the sequence. This conveys a sense of happiness and content. The colour difference alongside her opening and closing her eye suggests we are looking into her mind and imagination, playing with the idea that celebrity crushes are just like daydreams. I felt it important to highlight the innocence and naivety of celebrity crushes, showing that they can be harmless yet obsessive. The busy mise-en-scène in all of the shots I used highlights the vast quantity of merchandise you can buy. In this sense, my short film follows the style of Channel 4 documentary Crazy About One Direction, alongside the One Direction film This Is Us, which shows to the extreme celebrity obsession. The voiceover in the beginning of the film highlights how harmless the obsession you're about to witness is and how it's just childlike. The short voiceover and the sequence as a whole offers a sense of audience identification. In relation to the use of codes and conventions identified in my textual analysis, I felt it important to include non-diegetic music, as this was seen in both Anger Songs and Perfect Snogging, as well as Wild Child. The non-diegetic music, as used by Nick Moore, creates a sense of emotion and helps captivate the audience. However, unlike my textual analysis, the non-diegetic music I chose wasn't just background music, it also included the lyrics. I felt this would contribute further to the innocence and purity which we already see. I made a conscious decision to use a One Direction soundtrack, using one of their well-known mainstream songs. I felt this would reinforce the idea of obsession as well as contribute to the pace of the sequence. In terms of cinematography, I decided to use a lot of long shots, especially when focusing on the mise-en-scène. By using long shots and pan shots, we can not only see the obsession with all the One Direction merchandise in the room, but it also shows influence from Nick Moore's idea of one location. I also decided to use a variety of low angle and high angle shots during one scene to highlight the element of fixation, especially when looking at photographs. In terms of post-production, I sped up and slowed down a variety of different shots to break up the sequence. This also allowed me to show what different shot types I am able to identify and use within a sequence in a short amount of time. Another cinematic approach was the decision to use a handheld camera for some shots. This created a sense of realism and allowed me to get specific shots, like over the shoulder. Other shots were used on a tripod. They were set up carefully in order to get the right shot and angle. And I also took into consideration the rule of thirds to make it professional and aesthetically pleasing. When creating this story, I felt it important not to use dialogue, following the idea that actions speak louder than words. It is clear in the sequence what is happening and what you take from it, and I believe it was relatively effective. To strengthen my short film, during the pre-production stage, I wrote down a lot of ideas and produced a storyboard, drawing out the different shot types I could consider and what order the sequence would go in, alongside highlighting the different micro elements, for example, cinematography, editing, sound and mise-en-scene. I also created a shooting log, a schedule, and followed all the health and safety procedures you would if you was in the industry. Since there was no dialogue, I felt no need for a script. However, I did outline my shots, how long it would take, and everything that would go on in them. The title that appears on the opening shot, Infatuation, is stereotypical girly writing and in pink. This was carefully considered and sets the scene. By using an 8-year-old girl, I think the sequence and the short film as a whole came out as more realistic and believable. Since she herself is a One Direction fanatic, it was easy to connect with her. It didn't seem staged. And therefore, I believe my film was very successful and adhered to the research I found about Nick Moore, as well as incorporating some original ideas. I felt it linked well with my textual analysis and was also quite a modern take on a long-standing genre.